to be. The purpose of tonight is really simple. My goal is honestly to help change how you think about healthcare literally for the rest of your life. So in order to do that, I'm going to say things that you might hear, you might go, I don't know, Doc, I just don't know about that. I don't know if I believe that. And that's good, because I'm here to challenge what you believe. Because here's the reality. Let me give it to you straight. 5 out of 6 people in this country will die from heart disease or cancer. Okay? So think about that for a second. 5 out of 6 people. So what does that tell me? That tells me if you do what everybody else is doing, what kind of result are you going to get? Pretty much the same result everybody else is getting. So my job, I think, is not so much, as a chiropractor, it's not to crack your back, it's not to make your back pain or neck pain go away. A side effect of what I do here, by the way, is that tends to happen. But that's not the purpose of chiropractic here. And for what it's worth, guys, we're not talking about chiropractic tonight. We're talking about a little bit of it. But for the most part, we're going to talk about principles of health and healing that are universal. It just so happens that it fits really well into what chiropractic philosophy is all about. So tonight, what we're really talking about, quite honestly, are miracles. And people hear that, usually I watch an audience's eyes sort of glaze over, like, oh boy, here we go, we're talking about miracles. This is going to be good. I'll tell you honestly, just the fact that I'm here talking to you about this topic tonight is a miracle in and of itself. I was on my way to med school. I had my whole life figured out. When I was a kid like this big, I was one of those little kids who would, like, you find a dead animal somewhere in the neighborhood, you're like dissecting it. I was trying to figure out what happened to it. So I always knew that I'm going to be a medical doctor. Until my dad screwed the whole thing up. And what I mean by that is my dad, actually, when I was in undergrad, just about to go on to med school, he had something called sciatica. Anybody ever hear that? Sciatica is when you have like burning pain shooting down your leg. So I never forget him calling me in undergrad just before I graduated. He goes, your mom thinks I should go to a chiropractor. What do you think? Now, to give you a little background. He was in bed for about 3 months up until that point. I never saw my dad sick a day in his life. He couldn't move, couldn't walk, couldn't do anything. So he had injections into his spine, epidural, some of you may have heard of that. He was in traction in the hospital for a little bit. He was on all sorts of drugs. I mean, I think, literally, I don't even think he knew his name half the time because he was taking so many drugs to try to make this feel better. So he calls me up and he goes, should I go to a chiropractor? And my first words, I remember them to this day, and it's kind of ironic. I go, you've got enough problems. Why would you want to do that? That's what I said to him. So thankfully, he was a little more open-minded than me. So what he decided to do was go. So he goes to this chiropractor. And I come home for a break, and he's up walking around the house. So I'm like, wow, what happened? He goes, well, you didn't seem too crazy about the idea, but I figured I got nothing to lose. I got surgery scheduled in a few weeks, so I'm going to go to a chiropractor. So he goes, he gets better, and I'm sitting there kind of dumbfounded, like, really? So I go to the chiropractor's office. I still talk to this guy to this day, and I'm so embarrassed how this story pans out, but I go over to him and I said, what did you do that all the real doctors couldn't do? That's a good way to make friends, right? As a guy who's been practicing for 40 years, and I'm talking to him like I'm embarrassed to this day. But he explained something to me. He looks at me and he goes, well, I'll tell you what, let me show you. He grabbed his spine, and he said, hey, here's the nerves in your low back. And your dad had basically, instead of these holes wide open, he had this. Oh, not that exactly. But he had a bone shifted, putting pressure on a nerve. I'll make them like they used to. So as the bone shifts, I've shown this to all you guys. You put pressure on a nerve. And I said, well, what did you do? He goes, well, let me tell you what everybody else was doing. They knew that nerve was inflamed. They could see it. So they put injections into it and give you strong enough painkillers so you don't feel it anymore. I said, okay. I said, well, what was your big plan? He goes, well, I just gave that bone a little push to take the pressure off the nerve so that messages again from above down through that hole and just no nerve interference. It's going to work better. I was like, wow, that makes sense. And I just, at that moment, was like, I kind of have a newfound respect for chiropractic at this point. I'm like, so when I'm practicing, I'll refer people to chiropractors if they have sciatica or back pain. Just before I walked away, he said a sentence that changed the course of my life. He goes, and by the way, the same nerves that go down your leg also go to like your colon, your bladder, your prostate. There's branches and they supply all these internal organs. I'm like, really? Oh, that's interesting. And he goes, and it sort of got me thinking, because my dad had all sorts of problems with his colon, constipation, diarrhea, different things. He had problems with prostate, and amazingly, as soon as his leg pain got better, guess what happened? I went back and I started asking him. He's like, I don't really have any of those symptoms anymore. And today, he doesn't have any of those symptoms either. Now, I remember thinking to myself, either that's the biggest coincidence in the world or there's something to this stuff. And that's when I spent a whole summer just reading research. Can you imagine, there's hundreds of studies that show that if you put pressure on a nerve, you're going to have some kind of malfunction in an organ or a part of your body. Everybody gets the leg thing, but we don't realize, well, the same branches go to different organs. How could they possibly be working well if I could feel shooting pain in my leg or numbness in my arm or something like that? Does that make sense? So I started reading. The more I read, the more I realized, wow, this is incredible. So as I mentioned, like the first miracle of the night is just the fact that after reading all that stuff that summer, I found myself in chiropractic school in Davenport, Iowa, instead of medical school in New York somewhere. And tonight, I'm gonna ask a favor of you guys, because I share that story for one reason. I know where I was with all this. And I can't imagine I'm a whole lot different than most people, where you sit there and you go, I don't know, they're gonna pop and crack things, I'm not sure, how could that possibly be good for you, and why do I need this in the first place? That's what I thought until I started reading, until I learned. And now, obviously, you know, the greatest blessing in my life, honestly, is what I'm doing right now. I love sharing this with people because it's helped so many people. And I don't heal people, just so you know. Sometimes people will come in and they have all these rubs. They're like, I heard chiropractors think they can cure things. Here's something you need to understand. Nobody cures anything. No drug ever cured a person. Okay? No adjustment ever cured a person. What cures you? Quote unquote. What do we mean by cure, first of all? It means wherever you had some kind of damage and your body wasn't working properly, now it is. So what do you need to have it working properly again? New healthy cells wherever there were old damaged ones. So what makes new healthy cells? It's certainly not a medication, it's your body, right? It's the intelligence God put in your brain that runs your body. And that's some of what we're going to be talking about tonight. So my goal is really simple. It's to keep you out of doctors' offices. It's to keep you from succumbing to surgeries and drugs. And I think any doctor would agree with that, right? What we tend to practice in this country is what? Let me put this down. We tend to practice something called, instead of proactive health care, what do? We do reactive disease care. Does that make sense? In other words, we go along thinking everything's great, I feel pretty good, and then I'll do something when something hurts. Now, if that's your neck or back, that's one thing, but let's take another example. Let's say I never had my blood pressure, cholesterol, or anything checked, and my arteries are clogging as I go, but I feel pretty good. Do you know the first symptom of heart disease is what? For 50% of the people diagnosed with heart disease, well, I don't know if you call this diagnosed, the first symptom is a fatal heart attack. Why do I share that with you? Because the biggest mistake anybody will make is basing their healthcare on how they feel. If by the time you feel a toothache, you're having a root canal, right? Or they're yanking out a tooth. So as we go along tonight, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to ask you things and questions, and if you help me out, we'll get out of here faster, so that's always a good thing. So answer the questions, okay? But you're probably going to question some things. You go, I don't know. I just don't know if I get that. But I'm going to ask a favor of everybody. Simple favor. Just listen with an open mind. Take all the things I know I had. Well, I know chiropractic is this, and medicine is this, and physical therapy is this, and I thought I had it all figured out. And it turned out I didn't have anything figured out. I didn't know anything. All the information I thought I'd collected was completely wrong. And the majority of people, I hate to say it this way, but we're kind of brainwashed. I had a patient say to me tonight, this is funny, she goes, my friend at work has got all these things wrong with him. He's taken like this whole big pack of antibiotics, he's got neck pain, headaches, back pain. And I said, well, why don't you have him come on in and let's give him a checkup? And she looks at me and she goes, oh no, he thinks that I've been completely sold. He goes, they sold you on that whole chiropractic thing. And I'm listening to him, I'm like, well, that's interesting. I go, yeah, you have been sold. And she looks at me and she goes, really? I go, yeah. You've been sold on the fact that your body was designed to be healthy. You've lost faith in that over the years. You're in a world where you can't watch TV without seeing a drug commercial saying you need this or you need that or you need something else. What I sold you on was the idea that you're already designed to be healthy. If we can find interference and remove it, be it the junk food or the nerve interference, which we'll talk a little bit more about, or the stress in your life, if you remove that interference, will your body work the way God designed it to in the first place? Yeah. Better, at least? Absolutely. If that's not enough, might you go something a little more radical? Yeah, but what do most people do? They start the other way around. They go, I got a headache, so I'm going to take these drugs. And I'll take them for years versus trying to figure out what's causing it in the first place. So before we get into healthcare, let's do this. Let's talk about our current healthcare system. is what we're doing in this country working? All right, so that was easy. I've done this talk, this is like in hospitals for groups of doctors and nurses, and they say the same thing. They look at me and they go, no, we know it's not working. Most people, like, I have some ideas of how to improve it, but I don't think it's working. And the facts are true. I mean, the reality is this. I mentioned about 5 out of 6 people. I've recently read all sorts of different things from the World Health Organization where they rank countries from number 1 to number, all the way down the line for who's the healthiest to who's the sickest. I've read one where out of 83 countries we came in 79th. 78 countries are healthier than us. Right above us in that list was Estonia and Costa Rica. I'm thinking to myself, Estonia? I didn't even know where it was. I had to look on a map. Like, they're healthier than we are. Now, interestingly enough, we spend a whole lot more money on healthcare than any country on... In fact, imagine this. We spend 4 times more on healthcare than national defense. Does that sort of put this in perspective? If you're spending 4 times the amount, and how's our result been? Are Americans getting healthier? No. Healthcare through better chemistry is over. It's failed. It doesn't work. We have 5% of the population of the world. Think about this. That's it. Only 5% of the world is Americans. You guys consume 65% of all the drugs on the planet. So if you're consuming 65% of all the drugs, and you're only 5% of the population, something's wrong, right? We should be the healthiest country on Earth. Just shut the fan off. Thank you. So, if that's the case, yeah, right? Half the people don't know that there's a problem, right? Barbara Starfield, Dean of the School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins, right? So this is where the president goes if he's sick, was quoting on some of these studies, like, why is it that Americans are so sick? So what do you guys think? Why do you think we come in so low on all these health? Recently I read a study where they were talking about like the main countries. I say main, I don't mean that in a bad way, but like France, England, Denmark, Canada, Sweden, Japan. We came in dead last for infant mortality, dead last for low birth weight, second to last for life expectancy for females, last for life expectancy for males in that group. And we're like, I don't know, we got the most money, we're throwing the most money at the problem. Maybe there's something wrong. So I want to share a couple things with you. These are just things I find, and I'm not digging very hard. Like here's the cover of USA Today in one of these. So when you look at this stuff, you go, For instance, by the way, weren't most drugs at some point like a great idea? You know what I mean? Like when they were first invented, like oh my gosh, this is gonna be the greatest thing in the world. Like we were told that about thalidomide. We all know how that story went, right? There's not a day that I'm on the treadmill at the gym that I don't see a commercial from some lawyer saying, give us a call if you took such and such drug. Have you guys seen that? Yeah. Does that kind of make you wonder, like, this drug was the greatest idea 6 months ago, but now apparently it's killing people. So do you guys remember Fen-Phen? Mm-hmm. Fen-Phen was like a huge one, right? Well, Goldberg and Osborne, the lawyers in town, they would like to talk to you because apparently you might have pulmonary hypertension or some other problem now, so there's a big lawsuit about that. How about this one? Anybody remember Vioxx? Vioxx is a drug for arthritis. Well, 55,000 people, according to this, died from heart attacks taking this drug for like knee pain, things like that. And I'm not going to get into how Merck, who made the drug, had a pretty good idea that that was going to happen, but they realized they'd make a lot of money on the drug. How about this one? A 5-year Yale University study said that the most common ingredients in some of these products, listen to the products, Accutrim, Alka-Seltzer, Contact, Triaminic, Robitussin, all the things that most people have at their house, right? There's no question in my mind that PPA, which is the active ingredient in those products, increases the risk of brain hemorrhage, Dr. Horowitz said. I think that's kind of interesting. That's in USA Today. But yet, people are still taking it. How about this? A definitive review of medical journals shows that American medicine frequently causes more harm than good. Listen to this. The total number of medically caused deaths is 783,936, making our medical system the leading cause of death and injury in the United States. Now, is that according to the chiropractor down the block? No, that's according to Gary Null, PhD, Carolyn Dean, ND, MD, and Martin Feldman, MD. I could go on and on and on. Here's a good one. Wall Street Journal. Because we think the system we have works really good. Now, don't get me wrong. If I get hit by a bus or bit by a rattlesnake or something, somebody please take me to the doctor. Right? I think we have great crisis care. I don't want to be in any other country except this one. If something seriously wrong, I have an accident. But is it health care? How about this? Study questions evidence behind heart therapies. Heart disease is the most studied of all illnesses in modern medicine. Yet, only 11% of the 2,700 recommendations approved by cardiologists are supported by high-quality scientific testing, according to the Journal of the American Medical Association. Let that sink in for a second. What that means is, this is the part we know the most about. It's heart disease. 11% of 2,700 is what? At best, 300 of those 2,700 things we know actually work based on science. Kind of like taking estrogen, a hormone replacement for women. That was really just a big experiment, wasn't it? For about 30 plus years, women said, doctors said, take estrogen. Why? It's because women then should have less what? Heart disease and cancer. What was the rationale? Younger women have more estrogen, they have less heart disease and cancer. Older women have, don't have as much, so they're getting more of it. So what did they do? They started a study. What happened? Anybody know what the results were? They started a 10-year study that they stopped after 6 years. Why? Because after 6 years, it was really obvious that the women who were taking the estrogen had what? More heart disease and more cancer. So what do? You go back and say, oh, sorry to all the other people who got heart disease and cancer based on what was a good idea? That's the problem with healthcare the way it's running today, guys. It's based on, we think this should work, and this is a pretty good idea. But what is it really? Many times, it's just that, a good idea. And yet people will walk into my office and say, well, there's no science behind what you do. All right, well, we'll cover that in detail tonight. So you go, all right, I think there is at least as much science as the other side of the equation, which is 11% of it. How about this one? Drug errors killing outpatients at a rising rate. Short version of this, death from prescription drug errors increased at a higher rate over the last 10 years than any other cause of death. And that's not like, basically that's you go to Walgreens, you fill out the prescription, you go home, you die. 200,000 people roughly, according to Yale's study. That's about what happens. 200,000 people a year, that's like, I didn't do the math, but maybe a jumbo jet crashing every day for a year. Boy, that would make the front cover of the news, yet this, no one says a word about, do they? Here's one of the studies, World Health Study, Japan #1, US lags. In this study, we came in 20-something. Amazing. This is annual cost of medical intervention. I'm not going to get into that. Cover of USA Today. Cover. Diabetes drug called heart death risk. All the attorneys are on this one now. If you watch TV, by the way, when you watch TV and you see a drug commercial, is it not a joke that they say, might cause this. See your doctor if you got this. It's like, see your doctor if you're breathing. Because you might not be soon. I know I'm hitting it hard, but I just want you to think next time. Just go, is that drug going to make new healthy cells in my body to replace the damaged ones that are causing these symptoms? Or am I just covering stuff up with potentially bad side effect? So listen to what this says. A study found that Avandia raises heart attack risk by 43%. And cardiovascular death risk by 64%. If your death risk goes up 64%, is that a problem? I'll tell you, if there was a drug that lowered your death risk by 64%, it'd be selling billions and billions of dollars. And I won't even get into statin drugs to lower cholesterol. It's another... Cholesterol is by far not the best indicator of whether someone will have a heart attack or not, but I won't get into that with you guys. Yeah. Healthcare spending in the U.S., $2.2 trillion annually, 4 times more than national defense. How about this? Simple antibiotics. Good, bad, what do you guys think? Well, here's one interesting point. British Medical Journal reproaches doctors for prescribing antibiotics routinely for pediatric patients. Why? Reports of analysis of existing studies conclude not only is a practice a waste of time and money, but appears to be harmful, as antibiotics don't speed recovery, and studies suggest they lead to more recurrences of stronger germs. And that's exactly what we're creating. Superbugs. So here's another group that had something to say about this. Antibiotic therapy is not an effective treatment against ear infections, and rates of recurrent infections are significantly higher in children treated with antibiotics. Who said that? Journal of the American Medical Association. Do you know when they said that? December 18th, 1991. There's not a month that goes by that several children don't come in here with their parents that have had ear infections, that have had antibiotics for like 6 months in a row. And, I let them read that and they're like, oh my gosh. Well, we know that already, so why am I getting this? It's a good question. I don't know. They don't speed recovery, and they create stronger germs. So maybe that white kid who got one infection, who got an antibiotic, now got what? More infections just because of the first round. And here's something interesting. A new study published in the Journal of Clinical and Experimental Allergy added the fuel to concern over indiscriminate use of antibiotics. A child given antibiotics during their first year of life is 4 times more likely to develop asthma symptoms than one who's never taken antibiotics. That just makes me go, wow. I'm not even getting into antidepressants in grown-ups. Forget antidepressants in kids. That's another whole nightmare. But my point is this. That's a lot of information, right? I'm not here to say never take a drug. In fact, if you're taking it, don't stop. But I think your doctor would agree. If there was something you could do that would help you not have to take it, wouldn't you be a little better off? Absolutely. So that's what we're going to talk about the rest of the night. And it doesn't even take it that long. We're going to talk about principles of health and healing. So we know that healthcare through better chemistry has failed. It's failing in this country today. And now our president, what does he want to do? Let's add more people to the healthcare system. You got to kind of ask yourself a question. If it's already not working, how does adding more millions of people to it going to make it work any better? Do you know, by the way, that healthcare costs go up on average about 17% a year for major companies? So like, the IBMs of the world or whoever. 17% more they have to pay every year to insure their health insurance for their employees. Do you suppose that's because people are getting healthier? No, because doctors have to run more tests, they get prescribed more stuff, it costs them more money. Don't you think that system sooner or later is just going to topple over? Well, that's what's happening. Have you noticed that there's more and more research and more people walk into my office every day and they go, you don't do drugs here, do you? I'm like, no. They're like, all right, I'll consider anything you have to say then. Because I've got enough of those. I had a guy walk in with like a tackle box, literally. He's like, I got to take this in the morning, this in the afternoon. Is there anything you can do? I'm like, I don't know. But I do know one thing. We're going to see if you have interference in any shape, way, or form, be it diet, stress, nerve, and we'll remove it. And I bet you can do a little better. And I'm like, okay, I get that. So, you need 4 things to be healthy. And we'll hang on to this guy. What do you need to be healthy? Let's get into some good news. Enough of that, okay? We're done.
Diet.
You got to have good food, right? So, if you eat McDonald's 3 times a day, is your health potential higher or lower?
No.
Lower. This is easy. You're like, I want to get done fast, so I'm going to answer the questions, right? You remember that from the beginning. All right, so the quality of your food goes down, your health potential goes lower. What else do you need? Food.
Exercise.
Exercise is definitely important, without a doubt. But there's some couch potatoes who are healthy for a little while. So I'm talking about, like, what do you need, like, in the next month? If you don't have these things, you're dead.
Water.
Water, right? Absolutely. So the water. If you have bad water, drink tap water.
Iced tea.
Not going to do too well. So you need food, water, and
Air.
air. Got to have some air. And by the way, I did not invent these principles. Does everybody agree that these are pretty important things?
Yeah.
This is not a chiropractic theory or anything. Food, air, water. You need one more. What takes your food, air, and water and does something with it? Yeah, metabolism's not wrong.
Water.
But what? All right, I'll tell you what. Let's do it this way. I'll give you a hint. If I was to drop dead of a heart attack and I'm laying on the floor half dead, how are they going to get me going again?
Circulation.
You guys run the right track?
Health part.
How about...
Concussion.
Yeah, come on, you guys are so close.
Defibrillate.
Defibrillate, right, so they're using electricity, right? This whole thing is just one big electrical system. From above, down, through your body, electrical impulses. So I've heard Cornell say that 17 trillion messages per minute are traveling from your brain down your spinal cord in a minute. Imagine that. I have no idea. How are you supposed to calculate that? 17 trillion messages. Now, you've got to get electricity flowing from above down. Now, let me explain this, because this is critical.
That was a trick question.
Squeakiest marker ever. We've got to start at the very beginning. For you to understand healthcare, you got to understand how you're created in the first place and what this electricity has to do with anything. All right, what do we got there?
A sperm.
You got it. You guys get it? Sperm and egg came together a long, long time ago. What did they do?
Made us.
They made one little cell.
Mhm.
Could you imagine how much intelligence is in that one little cell that fit like on the head of a pin? There's a strand of DNA about 6 feet long sitting in there. It's got a blueprint to create you. Think about that for a second. It's going to create bone cells, blood cells, lens of your eyeball cells. It's going to create thousands of miles of nerves, thousands of miles of blood vessels, a heart that'll beat 100,000 times a day, on average. If you go outside, you'll start shivering to protect that intelligence, right? If you're hot, you start sweating. Your body, it's got this all built-in intelligence to keep you healthy for the rest of your life. That intelligence is living in this one little cell. And I could go on and on about how amazing it is, but personally, I think God put that intelligence in there. We can argue about that, I suppose, but would everybody at least agree on this much? It's smart. It knows what it's doing, right? It's just not, from this stage, it's not randomly created a body. There's a game plan in there. So this one little cell is going to become what?
Bunches.
Bunches of cells. And what do you think is the first thing that those bunches of cells are going to form?
We need to answer some questions.
What do you think?
Brain and heart.
What, 17?
So, you're what?
Brain, spine, and heart.
What do you think? Your brain. Your brain is the first thing that's created. From your brain grows your spinal what?
Oh.
Cord. Your spinal cord. So why is your brain formed first in the first place? What do you think?
It's the computer for the rest.
Yeah, so that intelligence that was in that one little cell is just going to get bigger, so it's going to create the rest of your body. So from your brain grows nerves, and from these nerves grow what? Literally organs.
Organs.
So my wife being pregnant, at this point we have one of those books, some of you may have seen it, she's like, hey, today we got toes, and today we got a heart, and all these little parts are being formed right in order, like 7 weeks, heart beating. I thought that was amazing, like it's not 6.5 weeks or 10 weeks, no, it's right here, every time, all the time. That intelligence then creates, lungs and all the other parts of your body. So let me ask you this. What is it that was in there? And I told you already this whole shock thing, right? It started from above, goes down, and creates that organ. What's traveling over those nerves? Electricity. So if electricity is traveling over a nerve, do you guys remember like high school physics? Can you increase interference to electricity? Like, can you put a kink in a wire?
Yeah, you can break it.
Yeah, I mean, you could break it, right? So like Christopher Reeve, for example, what happened to him? He moved one bone. Good color for this. He had one bone sitting up here that he moved what? About 1/2 inch. What happened to all the flow of intelligence from above down for him?
Cut it off.
Cut it off. So what happened to his organs? He needed machines to breathe for him, right? To keep him alive. Now, that is where our healthcare system shines. I mean, that's amazing. If he'd been in probably 90% of the countries in the world, he'd been dead that day. But he wasn't. So I don't ever want to appear as if I'm saying, we don't need modern medicine. Of course we do. But the price of admission to modern medicine is what? You got to already be sick. The whole idea is not to get sick in the first place. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking more about. So, you got all these bones. Isn't it interesting that there's only one part of your body completely encased in bone? Your heart's got a couple flimsy ribs in front of it. That's it. But your brain and your spinal cord are completely encased in bone. I would guess that's because they're probably really important. So, you get messages flowing from above down. Is there any way to interfere with that, you think? What could prevent that intelligence from getting down and out? Let me ask you this. Okay.
Abbreviated version of Kristen Ruiz.
Perfect. What a great answer. So, what if, instead of moving one bone 1/2 inch, I moved the bone 1/16 of an inch? Is it possible that instead of like turning the switch off, which is kind of what happened with him, it'd be almost like having a dimmer switch? So now, if 17 trillion messages should be getting through, what do I have now? I don't know, call it 16 trillion. So, why is that so important? Here's what you have to understand. This is the most important part of the whole thing, really. Your brain is the producer right? It produced your body and everything else. If you open up an embryological textbook and they'll say the brain, the nodal cord, all those things are formed and organs are formed from there. But ultimately, if this is your product, if you want a good product, what do you have to have? A great connection to the thing that produced it in the first place. Does that make sense? Do you realize that in 6 weeks or so, your liver is brand new? The whole lining of your stomach's new in 4 or 5 days. Your body's constantly replacing cells. Constantly. Shut the door. So if your body's constantly replacing cells because your brain sits up here and goes, oh, fix number 4 million in the heart today, and we're going to fix this, and we're going to fix that, and it knows that, Michael, as odd as that sounds, and it goes, hey, we're going to fix this liver cell, and we're going to coordinate all this stuff. But now let's say you got 95% of the message getting through, because you got one bone moved a 1/16 of an inch. By the way, is that painful?
Should be.
You would think it would be great if it was, but it's not. You can move bone and have it moved for years. Many of you have come in and been like, yeah, I just started feeling this like a couple weeks ago. And then I've shown you like spinal decay and bone spurs that are this big that have been growing over 20 years. And you go, it's kind of like heart disease, right? Any process in your body, if you get a cavity, something as simple as a toothache, did that start the day before? No, it usually started 6 months, maybe a year before where that tooth started rotting. But you hadn't passed a symptom threshold yet to where you're feeling it. The worst time to go to a dentist is what? When you got a toothache. That's like going to a cardiologist and you say, just pain, it's killing me. You already know, like, I probably got some clogged arteries. When did this start? Oh, probably like 20 or 30 years before. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So this is not a whole lot different. You don't have pain when you have a vertebrae shifted. You don't have pain for years. But sooner or later, if you leave it the wrong way, you're going to get enough malfunction. If you're lucky, you'll get neck or back pain first. Most people aren't lucky, though. What do they get? They get some pressure on a nerve that maybe goes to their stomach. Like I had a patient who, for 17, I think it was 17, don't quote me on this. John, it's like, I've had heartburn for 17 years. Right? He comes in, he's like, I would wake up at 2 in the morning, every morning, to take a half a pack of Tums, and I'm taking prescription drugs, and I got nowhere. Eventually, now what he had ultimately was pressure on the nerve in his mid-back. Those nerves go where? Well, right to your stomach. Eventually, he got mid-back pain, so he came to me as a chiropractor, and he's like, I got this kink between my shoulder blades. You think you can help me with that? He wasn't even the least bit concerned about it. It's like it's this kink. So I adjusted him a couple times. He goes, I didn't have heartburn last night. So I didn't even tell you about it because I don't think it had anything to do with this. But is that possible? From that day on, he has not had heartburn. He hasn't had it again. Now, does it always work that way? No. But wasn't that... He's like, so you mean to tell me if somebody would have told me to go get adjusted all those years ago, I probably would have avoided that whole thing? Like, sort of looks that way, I guess. Yeah, I would say. He's like, and he was mad. He's like, well, why didn't anybody tell me? Why didn't my doctor ever tell me that? I said, I'd like to think it's because you didn't know, not that he was holding out on you. I'm going to tell you something, guys, and this is so important you understand this. There is no money in chiropractic, okay? The money in healthcare is in what? Drugs, surgeries, big expensive procedures, and things you'll take forever. They don't develop drugs that you take for like 2 or 3 days that cure you. They develop things for high blood pressure, high cholesterol, whatever it is, that are what? Lifestyle drugs that you're going to take forever. So my whole point to that is what? If you have nerve interference, your brain is not producing a new healthy body the way it should. If you fast forward with 95% flow but 5% interference, what quality of organ are you going to get somewhere down the road? Eventually you start feeling pain, you're like, got this problem. That's when people walk into a chiropractor. If they're lucky or smart, combination of the two. I don't think I would have 20 years ago. I'd be like, I didn't let anybody crack anything. Now I understand. That has nothing to do with it. The whole purpose of it is, if I remove interference, I'm going to do well. I'm going to have my 100% flow from above down and get a better product. So listen to some of these things, because I think these are really amazing. This is actual copy of Harvard Medical School newsletter. Because in case you think, like, well, maybe this is all just a good theory. I guess it sounds okay, Doc, but prove it. Well, here's what Harvard Medical School had to say. This is amazing. 50 volunteers with high blood pressure and a misaligned atlas, or the first vertebrae in their neck, underwent a test. They basically had, they split up the whole group, they took the group, they adjusted them, either a fake adjustment or a real adjustment. The people who got real chiropractic care, listen to this, in the realignment group, blood pressure dropped a whopping 17 points. Far exceeding what is normally seen in the test of blood pressure medications. Can you imagine that? What Harvard Medical School knows is if someone's got the first bone in the neck shifted out of position, it can cause high blood pressure. And, in fact, if they get that adjusted and fixed, not only did their blood pressure go down, but it went down more than all the drugs that they can throw at the problem. And they go on to say the effect lasted far longer because the drugs people had to take for how long? Forever. As soon as they stopped taking the drug, what happened to the blood pressure? Right back up it went. You know what gets me? We're in a city of, what, 2 million people? How many people do you think went to their doctor today and were diagnosed with high blood pressure for the first time and just said, here's your prescription? Not even told, hey, you know, I don't know if I get this or not, or I even believe it, but I would suggest go to a chiropractor and get a checkup. Even the patient would probably look at them like they're crazy, right? Like, you want me to do what, doc? Well, there's some pretty good research. That research is 3 years old. And in fact, that wasn't the only study. That whole study was published in the Journal of Human Hypertension. Does that sound to you, by the way, like a chiropractic magazine? You know, people sometimes do, well, that's chiropractic research. Let me tell you, there's like this much chiropractic research. We can't afford to do it. The majority of the research that supports what I do as a chiropractor is done by who? Medical schools, medical colleges, big universities. They're trying half the time to disprove stuff, and they go, interesting. In fact, you can lose 60% of the flow through a nerve. This study was done at the University of Colorado by just putting the weight of a dime on that nerve. And you know what? You wouldn't feel a thing. You wouldn't even know you had that. And 60% of the message isn't getting somewhere. How well is that part of your body going to work? Now, I think this is kind of interesting. One of my patients brought this in. They were so excited. This is Consumer Reports. It says, Doc, look, check this out. You guys are the best at removing or reducing back pain. So Consumer Reports, you know how they rank like appliances and stuff? Well, they ranked chiropractic #1. About 60% of the people were satisfied with their chiropractor, 55% with their physical therapist, and it goes on. Primary care physician, about 30% were satisfied. And it amazes me because people will come in and go, I've been going to my doctor for like 3 years with my low back pain. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm like, yeah, I can see why. You know, according to Consumer Reports, they're not rated very high. I thought they're rated vacuum cleaners. Asthma patients may benefit from spinal manipulation. How about this one? Boosting your immunity through chiropractic. Listen to this quote. People under chiropractic care are 200% more resistant to disease than those who have never been adjusted. Subluxations decrease the genetic potential of the human species. Ron Perot, PhD, Chief of Cancer Research at NYU School of Medicine. Let's sink in a little bit. I don't even think I understand what I do as much as some of these guys who are studying this stuff all the time. They basically took people who were immunosuppressed, people suffering from cancer. They were talking all about DNA and how your body repairs, and it was amazing. And they said, hey, we pushed on a bone, took some pressure off a nerve, this guy's immune system responded better. This last thing, and then we'll start winding this down, but I thought this was amazing. Listen to this. Here's what happened. A few years ago, a group came along and said, an insurance company said, you know what we're going to do? Instead of having MDs as like in the first go-to guy in the insurance company, we're going to send people to chiropractors instead. So what we're going to do is make chiropractors, we're primary care physicians, but most people we're like the trickle-down effect. They've tried everything, they end up here. I've had people who've tried surgery and then they come in. But the point is, they said, we'll make the chiropractor the primary care guy, so no matter what's going on for the people in this insurance group, it was a big HMO. And by the way, to give you an idea, they did this over a 6-year period, and there were 70,000 people in this group. So 70,000 people over 6 years, you got whatever, stub toe, you go to the chiropractor. Listen to what happened. There was a 60% decrease in hospital admissions over those, 6 years. 59% less hospital days when people had to go to the hospital. 62% less outpatients and surgeries and procedures. 62% less surgeries were done. And 85% less pharmaceutical costs. You know what patient satisfaction was? Higher. You know what ultimate outcomes were? As good or better. So it's not like they're saying, oh, well, we just won't give those people their drugs and let them die. They did without because they figured out a cause of the problem versus dumping things on top of it. They did that study one more time, and it basically resulted in the exact same thing. Why do you suppose that is in our current healthcare system? Suppose there's some really upset people about this. Let me get this straight. 85% less pharmaceutical costs for a group of
It's
people?
about the money.
It's the biggest industry we have in this country today. And, I get that. They're a business. What's their ultimate responsibility to? It's not to you. They make drugs because they have shareholders and stock prices got to go up because we sell more drugs. That's it. You watch these commercials and you think, we're researching for the cure for this. If you cure anything, you've got no more market. They're not trying to find a cure for anything. They're trying to find something to make you feel a little better for a long period of time. You got to understand that, right? I mean, I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theory person, but they're not going to put themselves out of business by curing something. If there was a drug tomorrow that's like, you take it once and your high blood pressure's gone forever, you think that's going to make it to market? If I could give you a drug that you need to take for the rest of your life instead? All right, so where have we gotten after all this? I want to show you something. I want everybody to take a rubber band. You may not shoot me with it, please. You only need one. Oh, here. I don't want you to feel left out. This is like the best part of the whole thing. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to wrap this rubber band around your finger a couple times. 5, 6 times, something like that.
Are we gonna get a question and answer?
Not for you, no.
Why not?
Sure. We'll get you all sorts of questions. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Everybody got the rubber band on the finger? Pretty tight? Here's what we're doing. I am showing you. People will ask you, just like my patient today, she goes, they think I was just, convinced of something and that I've been sold and there's nothing to this. So here's how you explain chiropractic to somebody if they ask you. You grab their finger, you wrap a rubber band around it. Now you guys are sitting there going, this is kind of annoying. I got a problem here. What do you really have? And by the way, nobody take the rubber band off. We have never lost a finger doing this exercise, so it won't happen. But what's happening right now? You've got interference, right? Blood's not getting through there, nerve flow's not getting through there. What's happening to the cells in your finger right now? They're dying, they're breaking down, they're starting to die. So, as they start to die, what happens? Eventually you're going to get what, Oliver? Symptoms, right? You're going to start feeling pain. Right now you don't. This is a subluxation that you can see. There's interference, it's creating death somewhere in your body. You don't feel it for a long time. Eventually you're going to start to feel this. Like right about now, you guys start to feel it a little bit? So what do we tend to do when we feel something like that? We go, well, let me exercise a little bit. Let's try that. Actually feels a little better. You guys doing a little better with that? But the pain's, as soon as I stop, it comes back. People will come in all the time like, yeah, as soon as I move around, doc, I feel a little better. I'm just stiff getting out of bed in the morning. What do they tell me? They go, I got the normal aches and pains. You know how common that is? No. We're getting there. You ruined the whole experiment. All right, so eventually more damage builds up. So what happens? You try massage, try that out. That actually feels good too. But you can only get massage for so long, right? Sooner or later, you get more pressure. More damage, more symptoms. So we go to the doctor. Well, before we go to the doctor, we take some over-the-counter stuff. We try that. And that feels better for a little while. But then we go in and he gives you what? The real stuff. You're happy now. He's like, I got the good stuff. I take my Vicodin, I take whatever. I take whatever I need for whatever symptom I got, and I feel better. For how long?
As long as the drugs.
A little while. Yeah. Until I refill my prescription. But then what happens typically? You ever go and like all of a sudden start hurting again? You go to the doctor, what does he say? You just need, let's change your prescription. Something stronger, something different. Medicine works on a pump model. Have you ever noticed? You put in, you put in, you put in. And if that doesn't work, what do?
Take it out first.
Start taking things out. So, eventually, I can feel great while this thing falls off, right? We could die more comfortably with healthcare, but what's ultimately the answer to this problem? Eventually, what's the surgeon going to do? Oh, that organ, that part, that uterus, that ovary, that's not working right, so let's just do this. Let's just cut it off. You didn't need it anymore anyway, did you? I don't know. Probably there for a good reason. How about we remove the interference? What if you remove the interference halfway? Try that out. Just take it off a little bit. It's kind of hard to do that sometimes. Everybody's fingers white and blue. So that's kind of like starting chiropractic care. You remove it halfway, you feel a little better. The whole idea is to do what? Remove the interference completely. For how long? Forever, right? Keep it away. Have you not noticed that there are 40, 50, 60, 70, 80-year-olds? Some people are what? Playing golf, tennis, active, healthy, enjoying life. And other people are like this. And what do those people do? They look around and go, everybody else is kind of like this. It's normal. Guys, there is a tremendous difference between normal and common. Heart disease, common. Falling apart as you get older, common. Designed to be like that? Of course not. We just look at other people and we go, I'm as good as everybody else. Raise your standard. There are 85-year-olds running the P.F. Chang Marathon in January. There's not a lot of them. Should there be? There should be as many of them as who want to do that. Why can't a lot of them do it? Because damage that had built up over the course of years, like I kind of lost the curve in my neck, I got a shift, a bend, a kink, and I could deal with it. I'm okay, I guess. Until eventually you do what? A chiropractor does one thing, guys. Now there's two types of chiropractic care. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. There's those who say, come on in where it hurts. I'm not crazy about that style. And then there's those who say, hey look, if this is what it looks like, let's fix that. Let's remove that interference and let's keep it away because we restored normal mechanics. This is only physics, that's all it really is. It's so shrouded in mystery. If this is the way it's designed and you have a curve in your neck that's lost, you stretch your spinal cord about an inch. Now it gets thinner. Now messages don't flow and cells die. So I'll share one fast story with you and be all done because I know it's getting late and I got to pick my kids up at church and stuff. But I have been blessed to see some amazing things over the years. And I'll share a story about a little girl. In fact, I'm using this one because I believe there's someone here tonight who referred them in the first place. So Alex was, I think, 5 years old when she first came into the office. And her picture's actually hanging in the hallway. Let me give you the story of the background. Her parents come in. This little girl wasn't speaking. She couldn't even walk in a straight line without basically falling over. She walked on her tiptoes, she kind of walked like this. Parents came in with all sorts of information. They came in with EEG, spinal taps, all these different tests that were done. And what were they basically told? She's normal, there's nothing wrong with her, everything's fine. You could look at this little girl and you knew everything was not fine. She was not normal. So the dad looks at me and he goes, you think you can help her? And I said, Reeve, I have no idea if I can help her. But let's check out her spine and see what's going on. So I analyzed her spine. And by the way, I'm leaving out a ton of stuff. She was having seizures. Like, I forget the number, I want to say about 20 or so a day. Anytime she had a fever, she'd get seizures. She'd end up in the hospital for days at a time. So I'm looking at this little girl, and I'm reading all the reports, and everybody's saying how everything's normal. And I'm looking at this. The first bone in her neck is sitting twisted practically sideways. How did that happen? I don't know. Birth process, according to some great Harvard research studies going on right now, is probably the thing that causes the greatest amount of damage and subluxation in your body. In fact, there's a sheet that I would love to read to you tonight, but we're running out of time, where this doctor was talking about how, since doctors are taking you by the head, pulling and twisting, you've lost the curve just as you're being born. So with this little girl, that's what she had. No curve in her neck. It was actually backwards. This bone's jammed the wrong way. Do you think that'll affect your brainstem and how your body functions? Without a doubt. So I lay her down and started adjusting. And I tell you the truth, honestly, guys, I couldn't tell a difference. She'd lay down, lay on her back, I adjust her eyes would open up a little bit. She'd get up, she'd kind of go like this. And she'd just, like a wilted flower, this little girl looked. So this is going on for a little while, and the parents weren't really sharing a whole lot with me, so I'm thinking, all right, we'll keep doing what we're doing, because I can feel that she's subluxated, I'm moving it, it's going in the right direction. About a month into it, Mom goes, I just want to let you know. I'm like, how's she doing? She goes, well, she hasn't had a seizure since the first day you adjusted her. I'm like, wow, well, that would have been pretty good news to hear, like, on the second day, since I didn't know that was going on. And she's like, yeah. She's like, in fact, I noticed that she started talking 3- and 5-word sentences. Do you think you could do me a little favor? Would you just grab her story? It's right on the wall. I want to quote the mom. She goes on to say basically that, now she's actually can walk a straight line. So as A couple months go by. This little girl's talking. She's walking. She doesn't have any seizures anymore. Please understand something. I don't say this braggingly, but her life was completely changed by me pushing on a bone. You think about how many people in this world will never have the opportunity to have their spine checked. Forget in this world. Think about your neighbors, your family, friends, people you know. Most people never get that checkup. And they deal with those things going, it's just normal, it's calm, everybody's got it, I'm supposed to deal with this. And, so here's a picture of this little girl. And this is the story that her mom typed up. And listen to what she has to say. She goes, she has improved more than her doctors ever predicted she would. She's more attentive, more responsive verbally and physically. She can walk. She no longer walks on her toes. We're so glad we were introduced to chiropractic. This changed our lives. Could you imagine when your child's dealing with that kind of stuff, how that affects your whole family? And then all of a sudden to have her she's like, we have our daughter. We never really knew her. And all of a sudden, like we're being introduced to a new person. Literally, you guys will be in here and you'll get adjusted and I'll say something like, hey, your power's on now. What does that mean? That's exactly what that means. It's not as dramatic in somebody who, you guys as it was in her, but understand the same principle of your body healing from above down, and that's the way it functions. It's always at work. It's at work you every single day. So here's what it boils down to. This is the end. You got to pick what you have more faith in. You have two choices. It is either the intelligence that God put in your brain that runs your body, and your healthcare strategy is going to be, how do I make sure that there's little interference to that? Because other things can interfere with it, right? Drugs, bad food, toxins. Remove as many of those as you can. But primarily make sure there's no hard bone pushing on it. So you either have more faith in that intelligence, or what? The latest, greatest drug that somebody's going to invent. Which, let me ask you a question. 100 years from now, will we still taking the drugs we're taking today? Most people can yeah, I don't think so. Certainly not 1,000 years from now. We'll look at our healthcare system today, just like we look at what? Like leeches and things we used to do 100 years ago and go, oh, that was pretty good. That was like cutting edge then. Those things aren't based on laws. They're based on theories and then maybe that'll work kind of thing. Versus 1,000 years from now, is your brain still going to run your body? If you have a bone put pressure on a nerve, is it still going to cause damage? Without a doubt. So here's the whole purpose of tonight. Pick what side you're on. Decide which way you want to approach it. We got all sorts of excuses, right? I don't want to, it costs money and I got this, I got that. And, it's so easy to take an aspirin versus eat healthy. I have people come in all the time they're on high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high blood sugar, all these different medications. And they think well, I'm doing great. But they haven't changed their diet or exercised at all. They're still going to die prematurely. They're just dying more comfortably. Medicine is a sinking ship. You can jump off. You don't have to be on it. You can go when you have to. But boy, you don't want to have to go, do you? So, here's what I would ask a favor of each of you, okay? If anything I said, or the principles that I said made sense tonight, in fact, about half of you in the room are here because someone cared enough, heard a workshop or something similar to this and said, you should go get a checkup. So underneath your chairs are some clipboards. Would you guys grab those for me? All right. Here's how I look at it now. And I hope you look at it roughly the same way. I think we're all on the same team. We all realize that our healthcare system is not getting us any healthier. And that the only thing that ever will is your own body. So on top of those forms, you'll notice that there are a couple different ways to help someone get this information. Every other week, we do a workshop in the office. So if you've got a friend, a family member, somebody who's never had a checkup before, or you think might be interested in the information, please reserve a seat for them at the next workshop. Let them at least hear it. Another way to introduce people to what we do in the office is simply put their name down. We'll send them some information. You got somebody who lives far away that's got some chronic sinus problems, or their kids always have ear infections, they don't live in town. We'll send them information. We're really passionate about getting information in people's hands so they can make the best decisions for themselves. Down at the bottom, it talks about getting a gift card for somebody. Probably the single most important thing I can do for anybody is give them a checkup. So down at the bottom, you'll notice there's some spaces. Your friend, your parents, your pastor, it doesn't matter who it is. do yourself a favor. Don't look at it and go, that person wouldn't be interested. Most of the people who end up in here are the people who somebody else goes, they wouldn't care. They wouldn't be interested. If you put their name down and you give it to us at the end of the night, we will simply reserve a gift card for them at the office. We're not going to call them, by the way. This isn't about you sort of giving up your friends and then us calling them. Nobody likes that. We don't cold call. But we'll reserve a gift card if we have their name. You can ask them, hey, I learned something. I thought this was really interesting. If you put their name down, they get a checkup at no charge in the office. Can't make it a whole lot easier than that. There's really no barriers. And, basically that's it. I really hope that you heard something tonight that you went, wow, that makes sense. I hadn't thought about it that way before. Our goal is so simply to keep you guys healthy, active, playing golf when you're 80 if that's what you want to do. And unless you have a plan that's different than the average person, you won't get there. So in the beginning I said, tonight we're going to talk about miracles. And someone tell me, what's the miracle? You are, right? Yeah, well, that's a piece of it, but the miracle is you. You were created perfectly. Most of us have just lost faith in that. Just restore your body's faith in that. I'll read something really fast, and it's over. We chiropractors work with subtle substance of the soul. We release an imprisoned impulse, a tiny rivulet of force that emanates from the mind and flows over the nerves to the cells and stirs them to life. We deal with magic power that transforms common food into loving, thinking clay, that robes the earth with beauty and scents the flowers and glory of the air. In the dim, dark, distant long ago, when the sun first bowed, this power spoke, producing countless living forms and the crowning glory of them all. And what's that? Us, right? With tireless energy, it blows a bubble of each individual life and then silently, relentlessly dissolves the spirit into itself again. And yet you ask, can chiropractic cure appendicitis or the flu? Have you more faith in a knife or a spoonful of medicine than the power that animates the entire living world? And the guy who said that was B.J. Palmer, who's the guy who developed chiropractic years and years ago. And years from now, it'll still make sense. So, anybody have any questions at all? While you guys are filling those out, I'd be happy to answer any. Either I explained it really well or I lost all of you somewhere, but hopefully.
I have a question.
Okay. Shoot.
Why is it that you went to medical school? Why would you be against, or why are most doctors who come out of medical school against chiropractic when they specialize in that particularly? Why would they not?
Why is there a problem with medical doctors and
Why do
chiropractic?
they not? Yeah.
It's really simple.
Seriously, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that makes sense. Because
here's why. I'll tell you why. You're right. It doesn't take. There's really no major education you need to go. Is that person as healthy as this person? And if they're here, you get there.
A lot of it was the medical. I understand
Well,
that.
but
if you're a doctor who
is
cares
what
about
it is.
people, why do they not get that? Seriously.
They're not taught it. It's
But
that
it's
simple.
common sense.
Yeah, but they're not even exposed to it. There's no such thing as health as subluxations in medical school. They call it spinal fixations. They think, well, it is what it is. We get decay and that's it. So I think that every doctor, no matter what kind of doctor you are, you want the best for your patient. But if you're told by your professors year in and year out, there's nothing except drugs and surgery, and that's what we do. Heck, the AMA only a few years ago, very recently, said that a multivitamin is important. They said you don't even need multivitamin. Drugs first, vitamins, try that second. Well, they've completely reversed their position. Well, don't you think there was some pressure to reverse that position? I have friends who are MDs. One of them told me point blank, he's like, I never had a nutrition class in school. He's like, 3/4 of the diseases I deal with every day are nutrition diseases. Diabetes, heart disease, blood pressure, cholesterol. It's like, that's all I see for the most part. He goes, I don't know anything. He goes, I know IV nutrition. I can plug you into the right IV. He goes, but short of that, I don't know much about it. So it's not just chiropractic. It's just, they're not particularly biased against us, I don't think. They're just particularly focused on what they're focused on. And unfortunately, that's to the neglect of a lot of things that would help a lot of people. I mean, I could give you so many examples of that you go, wow, I never really thought about this.
So when you came, your dad was doing better because of chiropractic, right?
I had
What
to go
did
seek
you
it
learn?
out. I read a lot of information. I went and I talked to a chiropractor.
So you went and had x-rays done on yourself, and then you started getting adjusted because of that? Weren't you curious about what?
To be honest with you, I was in chiropractic school before I even got adjusted the first time. The concept made sense to me. I took it full force. I just said, all right, let's just go see what it's all about. And then as I learned more and more about it, I just thought. So, by the way, I'm happy to answer some more questions, but we're done. So if anybody's got to take off, thank you so much for your time.
Thank